Going forward, I wanted to talk a little bit about the Association of American Railroads. We are the association that is the public face and also the liaison for the government for all of the railroads, including our class ones, which we break our operations into classes based on revenue. So our class ones include CSX, BNSF, CN, Canadian Pacific, Kansas City Southern, Norfolk Southern, and Union Pacific. In addition to that, we also represent with our partners over at the short lines, over 600 short line and regional railroads. We look to liaison with the government for helping craft or even stymie some economic regulation. We believe in reasonable regulation. So we work closely with our friends on the Hill to do that as well. Safety and operations, that's the department in which I work in. We strive to develop industry standards for safety and security for safe operations across the industry. We also look to, we're looking at other means of research, technology, and stuff of that nature. We also have two subsidiaries, Rail Inc. and also the Transportation Technology Center. That is our research center that does testing of new technology. We do cybersecurity testing of things like locomotives and even our remote controlled removable bridges. So that's just an overview of our industry. We are large. We get a lot of stuff to the other critical infrastructures, including my example I wanted to use was agriculture. We transport the fertilizer that allows the farmers to grow the food that we then transport to areas to get onto the trucks to go to the supermarkets. As I mentioned at the very beginning, we are in unprecedented times. In mid-March, that was when our industry realized that quarantine was the best thing to do during the COVID. We're now more than 6 months into it. We are still in maybe what we call our phase 2 of trying to recover and get back going as far as like going into the office and stuff. I do want to reiterate, the trains did not stop. We continue to move. We continue to get goods and services to the people as fast as we could. But however, going back to talking about our employees, and them being a vital and critical part of our assets, in fact, the most. We quickly developed some plans that, to coincide with what the CDC was recommended. We started restricting access to our mission critical locations, like our safety and operation centers, and our call centers, dispatching centers. Only critical essential workers were allowed to be there, and they were paced and put and spread out in different areas to apply social distancing restrictions. We immediately also limited any kind of group settings, including we canceled all in-person meetings and went transform over to platforms such as this for our meetings. And that was done very seamlessly. It was quite impressive how quickly we were able to move to teleworking as fast as we did. We expanded our benefits, broadening our insurance coverage so that our employees could be tested on a regular basis for the virus. We also was working very closely with our government partners in DHS and CDC to get timely and accurate information as fast as possible. A lot of tasks cannot be done remotely, such as the operating of the trains and the dispatching centers. inspecting track and stuff of that nature. And in those cases, we worked very quickly to secure the proper equipment that they needed to stay safe and be able to adhere to the CDC guidelines. So in going remote, it happened quite quickly when the decision was made. Across the industry, anyone that's not what we called, everybody was critical and essential, but those that worked out of the office, like somebody like myself and everything, we went remote back in March 13th. We were prepared, and one of the reasons why we were prepared to do this is because we had plans in place. Over at least a decade, if not more, the industry has been participating in annual exercises that has brought in partners from other sectors and also our government partners to test situations such as this. We have participated in government exercises. There's been a lot of exercising of pandemics. Now, we were not prepared for it to be on this scale. I don't think anybody really was prepared for the scale, the global scale of COVID. Some of the things that we saw in moving remotely is the uptick and increase in cybersecurity threats. I'm going to back up for just one moment. I want to touch on a committee that we have within the association, and that is the Rail Industry Security Information Committee, RISC. They are made up of the Class 1s, Amtrak, Rail Inc., one of our regional railroads, Passenger Rail, VRE, and also our partners at the American Short Line and Regional Association. This committee has been around for 2 decades. They came together when the cyber threat of Y2K was something that was uncertain, but as a group, they worked together, coordinated, shared information, and when they saw that the response from that worked well, the committee stayed intact. And now it meets on a regular basis, in person, twice a year, except for now, but also twice monthly via call. There's a lot of information sharing going on among this group, and it also trickles down to our government partners and our short line and our suppliers as well. Some of the examples that I wanted to talk about the related threats that we saw on the cyber side. Of course, we all heard about the Zoom bombing. That was pranksters and malicious actors cutting into people's conference calls. Sometimes just, to say really, really bad, vile things. And some of it was to listen in and eavesdrop on the conversations. In response, some of our members prohibited the use of the platform Zoom, but we also then put together some guidelines on those that did use it to make their meetings safe. We saw a lot of COVID-related phishing attempts. Bad actors are always going to take advantage and exploit something of this nature, play on the fears and uncertainty of people. And they were, quite successful in other sectors. I can say that in our sector, with our information sharing network intact, we were able to thwart quite a bit of those. We also saw threats to mobile devices. We all went mobile, we all went remote, and we are using our phones, our laptops, way more now. And so they became another target for malicious actors. We also identified a very, very popular map that shows it's called the Johns Hopkins coronavirus map. One threat actor mimicked it and was able to dispatch the malware known as Olzerot. It was very notable because it was the degree of which they were able to reproduce this site was remarkable. You had to really pay attention to be able to tell. So that was some of the cybersecurity threats we saw as we all went remote. Oops. So one of the things also that even though we remained in operations, the trains kept going, we continued to perform, and we continued to move commodities. There was some severe economic disruptions across the supply chain. As you can see on the right, I think this is probably a very, very familiar site across the United States. That is the local Target that I frequent. That is the toilet paper aisle and the pasta aisle. And it would remain that way for weeks on end. Was this because the trains were not operating? No, it was because of some flaws that the whole of this of COVID. We also, because of the transmission and the adverse effects, a lot of the businesses around closed down, and that also caused a lot of dip in the traffic to get the commodities to. For instance, many restaurants, well, all restaurants and bars pretty much at some point in time closed their doors, some without them ever opening again. It's been very, very economically hard on the restaurant and the services industry. Travel quarantines were put in place. This was also very critical to, and I'll get into it in a little bit, but the travel restrictions caused some very, very critical disruptions in our supply chain. Being able to get essential consultants over from overseas, had to work very hard to be able to get waivers in that case. We saw a lot of shortages of our personal protective equipment, PPE, and then in some cases, those that had a stockpile of it in the industry, it had expired, or the stuff that we were getting was not meeting OSHA standards. And across the industry, we saw a decrease of approximately 15%. And on the good news side, we are now starting to see an uptick. So we're hoping to have recovery within the next few months. It won't be the same, from our January numbers, but we are in the process of increasing our traffic and being able to get the commodities back on the shelf so it doesn't look like that picture on the right. Some of the things that the railroads were able to respond to that I thought was pretty exceptional during this time. One thing is that, the railroads were very innovative and they were very flexible. They immediately implemented some technologies that allowed workers to be able to do their job seamlessly remotely, whether it was dispatching brand new iPads to everybody so that they can access certain databases or operations for safety purposes. In one case, one of our class ones, Union Pacific, worked closely with Dow Chemical to get the much needed antiseptics and disinfectants and PPE to the essential workers. In another case, they also worked with a local brewery to help actually make the sanitizer to get that out to all the essential workers. We also, as an industry, we work closely with the Department of Homeland Security to secure reusable and washable cloth coverings across the transportation sector. That was a notable feat that, it went from us having a major shortage of PPE for our workers to having enough to cover and also share with our other industries and sectors in the critical infrastructure, especially in the healthcare. We also work closely with the United States Customs and Border Patrol and the State Department to get a exemption to the travel ban, to get a very, very vital engineer over from Germany to help with the essential production to support manufacturing of rail safety devices. That was quite a feat. It was the very first exemption that was given. And if we had not been able to do that, we would have had additional disruptions in our manufacturing supply chain. We also worked with the Federal Rail Administration to provide waivers to accommodate for the CDC guidelines for social distancing. These exemptions allowed us to put off some of the audits that FRA conducts on our workforce, and also the amount of people that are required to be on hand. So those were waived. They will be back in place once this pandemic is under control. So some lessons learned. I like to start with the good news first. We were able to seamlessly move to remote operations. We were also able to continue getting goods and services, even though there was disruptions throughout the entire supply chain. The trains kept moving, and that is going to always be the case. We've been an industry that's been around for 200 years, and when things go wrong, we just switch back into our manual state and we keep things going. We found, though, that the amount of investment that the industry has put into information technology and security paid off. This was unprecedented, the move to remote work. We expected some stress to be on the networks, but that was not the case. It really showed that this type of investment up front, it might not might not be a good sale at first, with budgets being tight, but in this case, it definitely demonstrated that investment would pay off in the long run. The preparation that the industry has been going for many years also paid off. Our annual exercising, our participation in other exercising, testing of systems, testing of different policies, our security plans, our incident response plans, our communications, all those did pay off. And we continue to do that as well. We will be having an industry exercise, even though one of our members mentioned one time that this what we're going through right now with protests and COVID and everything is like the longest running AAR exercise they've ever been in. But we are going to continue with that program in spite of it. It's just going to be scaled down to accommodate for the resources that are devoted to the COVID response. The value of accurate and timely information. I think that had we had better information up front, we would have been able to act even quicker. But given the circumstances, I think that we were able to respond quickly. And then we got into a regular cadence with our government partners and CDC to provide accurate and timely information. I think we also demonstrated our resiliency and ingenuity. There was a lot of workarounds in some cases and some very, very clever ways of which we were able to respond and to continue doing what we do. We also, demonstrated the critical role that our industry plays to transport of critical goods across all sectors and to people's homes. Also, the importance of our employee health and wellness during this time of remote work. It's hard on a lot of families. We've got a total breakdown now of the boundary between work life and home life, and the investment in employee assistance programs cannot be understated. That I think has been a real awakening to our industry and across all sectors, is the wellness of our critical and very much valued employees. And another good news is that we've learned that the remote work is going to redefine some geographic considerations for our talent recruitment. Some areas of our industry, they look to hire people that are local because the going into the office. But now we've seen that we can maybe pull from other areas and allow people to work anywhere where they can. One of our research institutes is looking at that now, and I think that is a positive development. Now the bad news. Of course, we saw that bad actors are going to exploit a crisis. Never let a good crisis go to waste. They prey on the fear and uncertainty of our citizens in a time like this to exploit networks, steal information, and for either espionage or a criminal gang. We've also seen the danger of disinformation and misinformation campaigns. Jeopardizes our recovery across all infrastructure. We have worked as an industry to provide awareness training and to provide information on this type of campaigns that we are seeing from nation state actors and criminals as well. Teleworking technology, although it's convenient and it functions sometimes well and sometimes not, it's not a permanent substitute. In-person meetings are very, very valuable, and we hope to get to those soon. Decisions that can be made within an hour in a meeting is now taking, at least in my experience, it can take over a month to come to a conclusion, because we're working over these platforms, but not having that in-person interaction to be able to get things done. So I look forward to getting back to that normal. We definitely saw how fragile our global supply chain is. It's recovering, but I think that the flaws that we saw and is stuff for us to really reflect on and take a look at how we approach our suppliers, our vendors, and also our overseas and international supply chain. We also, saw the over-reliance on international production. I'm not advocating for, everything to be made in the U.S., but I think that we did see, how over-reliant we are on very, very critical components within our healthcare, within our manufacturing, our information technology, and so on. We also saw that the federal government was really slow to respond. And in some areas, it was the pressure that came to bear from our industry and our partners across critical infrastructure for them to respond. And I think that was a major takeaway. And as I mentioned earlier, the dissolution of the home and work boundaries, I think that's put a strain on many of our employees. We have learned that our day starts a lot sooner and it ends a lot later. Weekends are not weekends anymore. Everything is just a day. There's not a Friday. And I think that comes from not having telework, having our commute to kind of give that break of now my day is done. So some of our key takeaways: have a plan, test it, keep it updated. Also invest in the information technology, because you don't know when something's going to escalate. And when you have that investment in it, it makes things a lot more seamless. Continue to, one of the items that we had was, that we worked with the federal government, was who is our essential workers and how can we support them? So we worked using the federal guidelines to be able to identify our essential workers and those that should be prioritized. We worked with our federal agencies to get temporary relief, and that in that way that we can put our employees' safety and security top of the line. Be flexible. We had to make needed changes very quickly, and I think that our resiliency and our preparation allowed us to be able to think in other ways. I hate the term "think out of the box," but it really was the flexibility that we were able to do. Invest in your employees' mental health and wellness. Also, when you're putting together your response planning, consider the supply chain disruptions. We saw some really critical areas of which it wouldn't have come up in our plan testing. But now this is something that we will be considering as we move forward with our annual exercise program. And also just, even though this is unprecedented times and there's not a whole lot to laugh about, humor is another defense against the universe, as Mel Brooks would say. So it's a much needed armor. So with that, that's the end of my presentation.